So we'll get started. There might be a few people still coming in, but welcome to tonight's All Art. My name is Marian Wihak. I'm a production designer based in Toronto, Ontario, and I'm the Directors Guild of Canada National Art Department rep. And I'm thrilled to welcome you to this event tonight. I don't know how many of you are Zooming in from far away, but please in the chat, let us know where you are Zooming in from, because quite often we've had people from different continents and certainly across the country, and it's always interesting to see that. So tonight's conversation, Away from Home, Remote Design Challenges, and we have a great panel lined up, which I'll talk about in just a moment. And I really look forward to the conversation, but first a few things worth mentioning. To access simultaneous French AI translation, if you need it, check the bottom of your screen. And to allow the information-filled conversation to flow with ease, we'll reserve the questions till the last 20 minutes, 30 minutes. So we'll have a conversation for about 60 minutes and tend to wrap up around the 90-minute mark. In the meantime, again, in the chat, we'd love to know where you're zooming in from, and feel free to chat amongst yourselves if you'd like. The event is being recorded. Oh, and just if you have questions, we will have this question session at the end, but you can put your questions into the Q&A as they come to mind, okay? It's being recorded, and this recording will be on the DGC YouTube channel later this week. And at the end of today's conversation, our DGC tech champ, Julian Lung, will post that link into the chat for you. So just before we get the conversation started, please join me in honoring this request and acknowledgement. Wherever you are in Canada or elsewhere in the world, please take a moment to honor our Indigenous people's long history of welcoming many nations to the beautiful territories. I'm grateful for all that we have, and I am committed to upholding and uplifting voices and values of our host nations. We also acknowledge those who came here forcibly, particularly as a result of the transatlantic slave trade. And therefore we honor and pay tribute to the ancestors of African origin and descent. Tonight's conversation will focus on projects that had modest budgets of under $10 million Canadian. And the reason it's focused on that is I think it's super important to amplify Canadian creators and productions. Certainly many Canadians are doing very large shows all around the world, but I just wanted to really kind of give some shout outs to the people that are doing these more modest budget shows. On these kind of shows, it isn't possible to just throw money to solve the problem. So they have to be really inventive and creative with their challenge solving. Personally, I've had the good fortune of working away from home on a few modestly budgeted Canadian films, both in Poland and Cape Town, South Africa, where although both those places had legacy filmmaking industries, the lack of unions, different job categories, different ways of doing things, different resources, it forced me to shift my expectations and remain open to different ways of working. So now it gives me great pleasure to introduce the fantastic panel that is assembled here tonight, each of whom will share their own intense and varied experiences of working away from home, including both the lows and the highs of that challenge. So a warm welcome to our guest panelists. First of all, I'd like to introduce Yola van Leeuwankamp. Yola. Yola's been shaping the visual language of film and television for nearly 18 years. Based in Montreal, she worked primarily as a production designer, drawing on a multidisciplinary background that includes photography, costume design, and directing. These influences inform her layered, intuitive approach to storytelling on such films as Antigone and Richelieu, and extends to projects she has done in remote settings, such as Tell Me Why These Things Are So Beautiful, or Dis-moi pourquoi tu es so belle, shot partially in Cuba, and more recently, You Will Be Free, Ma Fille Tu Seras Libre, filmed in Cyprus. Yola sees production design as a quiet architecture, one that holds story, memory, and emotion in every frame. Welcome, Yola.
Hi.
Andy Berry is a Toronto-based production designer with more than 25 years experience in creating unique character-based environments for film and television. For Andy, the pleasure of production design comes in the creation of sets that are informed by character, both the people meant to inhabit the spaces and the character of the script itself. And his film experience covers a broad range of genres, from drama to horror to comedy, from contemporary to period, with selected credits including Christopher Waltz's directorial debut, Georgetown, Bruce McDonald's Hellions and the Husband, and the recent series Pradeeps of Pittsburgh and Anne for Me. Andy has also a lot of experience working away from home, most recently on the highly successful new comedy North of North, shot entirely in Iqaluit Nunavut and airing on Netflix, CBC, and APTN. And also Jeffrey St. Jules' new feature, The Silent Planet, shot in Gorsemore National Park, Newfoundland. Hey, Andy. Andy's on a boat in the middle of Lake Ontario. Well, not really, he's in Coburg. In the middle of Lake Ontario, sounds better. And finally, Mercedes Coyle. Mercedes is a Hungarian-Canadian production designer known for her highly stylized feature films and TV shows, including Don't Even, Season 1, and Suze, that premiered at the Busan International Film Festival. Mercedes has also designed multiple digital series on CBC Gem, and her work has screened around the world at film festivals and aired on network TV and streamers. During the COVID pandemic and during our days of remote living, Mercedes took this literally when she designed Polaris in the Yukon, something I look forward to hearing more about tonight. So let's get started. I have a few kind of overall questions for all of you. So either you can all answer them or maybe just one at a time. But and then I'll have some more individual specific questions. But to help set the scene and whet our appetites and ease into the conversation, I'd like to ask all of you, in just a few teasing words, tell us the very best single memory or experience you have related to working away from home. And it could be personal or it could be work related, despite the challenges. And please mention which project it was and where you were situated. And again, I just wanted to be real brief, kind of give people a taste of what stands out in their memory. So Yola, actually, we'll start with Mercedes. We'll go backward the other way.
Yeah, hi. So the film I worked on was called Polaris. We shot in Whitehorse in the Yukon. I would say my favorite part about that film particularly was I really enjoyed snowmobiling to set. I know that's probably kind of random, but we would drive probably about an hour outside of the actual city, get maybe half an hour outside of cell service, and then continue to snowmobile to set, which then also made building our sets really interesting because everything had to be dragged through.
We want to get into that later. This is just a quick,
yeah,
a little
yeah.
brief. Okay.
So sorry, yeah. That's my favorite part.
Snowmobiling, okay.
Mm-hmm.
In the Arctic, okay.
Yeah.
And what about you, Bear? What about you, Andy? One single little tease memory.
Yeah, it is difficult. Bell Island in Newfoundland, our last day of shooting on the Silent Planet. It was scheduled purposely to be the last day because it was ferry access only. So we didn't know if we'd actually get it. And we figured if we did it last day, then it doesn't affect any of the other schedule. But being on the beach, to access the beach, you have to sort of climb down a cliff and then go through a cave to get to this tidal access only beach. And there were icebergs off in the distance and whales were breaching, and we had a couple of scenes shot that was just absolutely beautiful. And the end of, a long journey. So
fantastic.
That's one of the highlights. Yeah.
Yeah. What about you, Yola?
I would say it's the scouting that I love the most, and exploring and going through places that we might not even shoot, but those for me they're just little moments. It's not a specific moment that I have, but that's
the cumulative experience of seeing special places.
absolutely.
Right?
In Cyprus, that was my last show where we were in Cyprus.
Okay. And then conversely, in just a few words, again, just a succinct kind of like a little tease. What was the most challenging situation you found yourself while working away from home? Yola.
The most challenging, sorry, I'm reading my notes. It's not just one moment. It's all the little moments of communicating. For me, it was, I'm just gonna try to go quickly. It was a culture that I am not part of, I didn't know of. So it was trying to communicate that culture to another culture. So it was a mix of cultures trying to show something. We'll go more deeply there, but that was the most challenging thing I had to do. Yeah.
Well, it's an interesting and very real one, I think, too, if you're working away from home.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Have you, Mercedes?
Yeah, yeah, I would say the most challenging aspect was just the kind of lack of resources, I guess. You know, you can't Amazon things up north. It would take, especially during the pandemic, anything I got mailed took 5 weeks minimum. So yeah, just the how hard it was to get things and how expensive everything was.
Yeah, and that's a part of the conversation we'll get into later, but just kind of that stands out. And what about you, Andy?
Yeah, that's interesting. Both Mercedes and Yola's answers really rung a bell. I took this a bit more literally, and I was like, well, this one physical task was the hardest. But both of those things, cultural and not even cultural, but being in certain places have their own challenges. Sometimes they're cultural, sometimes they're language, or a mix of all of those. And then the logistics of being really far away or in a hard to get to place is also really challenging. I think one time where those sort of both came together again on Silent Planet. This was in a different part of Newfoundland in Grossmore National Park with tablelands. I had gone the day before. My carpenters were to show up to install this set piece that we would have to carry, almost a kilometer by hand in. And I was there with the parks rep and realized at the beginning of the meeting that we didn't actually have permission yet to be there to film. It was sort of assumed, but there was no, anyway, that was the most challenging when I realized, oh, this whole thing is resting on me having this hike to the edge of the park to have a conversation about the next steps. This is happening. The production's showing up tomorrow. And if this doesn't go well, we won't be filming this. So, yeah.
That's a lot of weight.
Yeah.
Yeah. Great. So, and then to drill down some individual questions for you. Let's start with Mercedes. I mean, just like Polaris, I haven't seen it, but just to give people some background, it was shot in the Yukon, I understand. It was a $2 million feature set in 2144, futuristic, against the harsh backdrop of a subarctic wasteland and a human child raised by a mama polar bear narrowly escapes capture from a brutal hunting party and sets out across the vast winter landscape. So obviously, I watched the trailer, and it's very pretty rigorous shooting there. And so I guess just where did you shoot? And tell us a little bit about that shoot and how you locations and all that stuff.
Yeah, so we shot mostly, the city of Whitehorse, actually, the bounds of it is very large, just for, I guess, political reasons. They make it really big. But the actual where people live is, very close. So there's the downtown core, if you could say that. I think there's like 20,000 people that live there. We were driving out probably anywhere between half an hour to an hour outside of the city or outside of the city core, which, like I said before, completely no cell service. So, and I'm like terrible at directions. So always hoping that I was going to make it there.
What month were you in?
Oh, I got there end of January. We started filming 2021. We also, since it was during the pandemic, we had to all isolate for 2 weeks. So the first 2 weeks I was there, completely just in the hotel room. And when it was really dark too. So the sun would not come up till 10 or 11 and go back down at like 3. So sitting in a dark hotel room for like 2 weeks. But then we started, did all the prep through February and started shooting in March. So I don't know if, I don't know if I want to show images or
and while you're sure show images, but and where did you take people with you? Did you find locals to help you?
Or? No, everyone had to be local. Probably partially because of COVID, but probably more because of budget. Which this was the first time I ever worked without my regular team. So that was at first scary, but realizing and learning, like, that's kind of one of my favorite things now is working with people I've never met, and kind of learning new skills. People in The Yukon, I would say, are unbelievably skilled. Like everyone on my team, I had a much smaller team than I normally do, and everyone was so handy. Like my set
Many things.
dresser, yeah, with just carpentry and everything was crazy. One of my set dressers had built, her and her husband built their house by themselves in the woods like years ago. So like everyone had that level of skill, like could build their own houses. So yeah, that was cool. So it, like I said before, it was really fun. Like snow going out, it was set in the future, so everything was supposed to look desolate and isolated. And yeah, so yeah.
And did you have any, okay, so um did you control, like, did you just accept, embrace the landscape completely as it was, or did you try to, again, you can't control it or change it, but you know what I mean? Like, how did you lean into it, and what did you try to adjust, or like, did you have to do post to kind of flush things in? Because I had a look at the clip, and the snow is very pristine, even though it's kind of dystopian and all that stuff.
Yeah, as far as landscape, I think we really wanted to lean into it. The director originally wrote it that in Northwest Territories, where she was from, and then when we got to the Yukon, I think she realized quickly the landscape is very different. The Yukon's a lot more mountains and trees, and
That's our
Northwest Territories is a lot more flat and like almost desert like. So I think that was a pivot. I think she originally wanted much less trees and forests, and then we ended up just leaning into that. And then everything I built and brought in was since it was futuristic, it was all like, or post-apocalyptic, I guess is kind of the right term. Everything was dilapidated, which we built all of it. Like none of it was anything that was there.
You want to show some pictures? Like, do you have any?
Yeah, sure.
It's like what you
My
with and
image one, I think if Julian has them. I didn't take a lot of photos, surprisingly, because it was too cold. I was going through my photos on my phone. I was like, oh, I actually didn't take a lot of photos when I was there, surprisingly.
what, it was too cold for your fingers?
Yeah, I didn't end up, yeah, like ended up not having, I got, it was so cold. It was like negative 40. What I will say though, is when people ask how cold it wasn't windy. So when you dressed up well, I didn't find it was actually as cold as when you're in Toronto and it's like this, the wind is like unbearable when you're by the water. Yeah, so image one is that's just kind of the start of us building some of our sets. You can see
Where
my
did you get the
team.
wood from? Did it come locally?
Everything was local, yeah. Everything. I think this was actually the wood that a girl sitting on is all one of my set dressers' backyards, clearing his trees. So number two is us building one of the cabin sets. Yeah, and because everything is, and then you go to number three. I felt like I had to be more resourceful there because of how expensive things were.
Like
And
the tires from the local.
oh yeah, everything we got, since there's no prop houses and you know you can't really paint when it's negative 40, everything ended up being
Yeah, that's
authentically.
Tell us
Yeah.
about that, like painting or changing that kind of thing.
So we end up getting everything, and then image 4 is it done. The final set for this one cabin. Everything I end up getting locally from there's an Indigenous run dump that was about 40 minutes outside the city. So if you go to image 5, it's kind of hard to show, but it's we end up digging a lot of what we needed out through the dump, which was very cool, very I guess environmental. So instead of yeah,
Wow.
this I wish I could show how big this was. And the snow made it very hard to dig things out, but my team ended up going through and collecting all the rusty metal we needed, everything. And yeah, a lot of our sets were that in that theme, like the wires and yeah. So my team was very resourceful in the sense that like they wanted to build everything out of shipping skids and wanted to do a lot more, I guess, recycling kind of stuff, which is cool. Just kind of the type of people they are out there.
And I guess at the
And
end of that,
Yeah, yeah. So yeah, everything came like I guess authentically. Like everything came, like all the metal, all the scraps, everything came from digging through garbage.
and did you paint or anything like that? Like because of the
We
cold?
yeah, we couldn't. We did we had our studio and we did paint some stuff in the studio, but there was one day we were painting something and someone had opened a door and it completely like froze all the paint as it was drying on our, like we had a bunch of vehicles that we made that we were painting and they got just weird, like the paint completely like crystallized.
Wow.
Yeah,
Wow. So, yeah, that's, I mean, because that's an obvious, like even whether it's even in Toronto, like in the winter, painting or tough back or it's not tape or little
No.
whatever, none of that thing
Yeah.
sticks, right? So,
Yeah.
big challenge.
So yeah, the whole experience I found was interesting working with people who did want to be more like doing things I wouldn't normally have done. You know, I normally wouldn't build a set out of shipping skids, but
But it's
yeah.
it suited the story too, obviously.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure.
Did you have any encounters with wildlife?
Luckily it was winter, so the bears were hibernating. I
Even the
heard
polar bears?
there's no polar bears in
Oh, there
in
aren't.
that
Okay.
part. No. They're more white. I think they're more in Northwest Territories in that way.
Okay.
Apparently there had been, but not often. There were a lot of crows, which were crazy and bigger than you think.
Mm.
And not so much wildlife, but it was very cool seeing how many people do dog sled up there, which is very cool.
Recreationally. Okay.
Yeah, yeah,
Hmm.
and in the city and stuff.
How long did you shoot for? Like, how long were you up there for total?
12 weeks, I think.
Oh, that's quite a chunk.
Yeah,
Typically,
yeah,
it's not
like
maybe-
six perhaps 6 shoot, I think.
So, well, that's really interesting. Do you guys have any comments before we go on to your particular story? Give any-
I can relate to the too cold to paint. It was one of the first things I realized that in Iqaluit, it was like, oh right, everything that I see is going to be this color. Like this is,
Yeah,
but then you start to think, and as you say, you paint stuff in the stage and then bring it out and apply it. But no tape, as you mentioned, Marian, like you really try to think of how things can cleat onto each other or just tack on, and there's no sticking, there's no painting. And the
This is
wind,
for-
yeah,
for north of north in Iqaluit, it was and some very similar experiences. Although there's no trees whatsoever,
yeah.
I met a lot of people who had never seen a tree, which is
Wow.
a mind-boggling thing. But
People who lived in North, people who lived there, you mean?
Yep,
They've never seen a tree.
never
Like an
never had it
indigenous
south.
tree or any kind of, they've never seen
No
it just-
trees,
Wow,
not in real life, not in person.
wow.
That's
Just
crazy.
No trees. Yeah. But the dog culture is very strong as well. There's a lot of dog sledding that goes on. It's a bit of a more burdened thing in that part of the world. But
What about for
yeah,
like for both
fascinating.
your cases? Like, you know, Iqaluit is a city. Like it's developed. I've not been there, but my sister used to live there. In
It's a
fact,
city.
Mhm,
Yeah.
Yeah.
mhm.
but there's power. So
I-
like, what about power? Like, how did you guys like? Did you use solar generators or what did you use?
We used a gas generator when we were building on location, so that was fine. But it was nerve-wracking with the fear of getting stuck because surprisingly, none of the rental vehicles they gave us had winter tires, which I thought was kind of shocking.
Oh,
Yeah. So we
wow.
did get a cube truck stuck in the snow, and luckily a police car was driving by and they were able to like dig us out. But there were moments where like when I'd be driving, I'd be like, oh, if I get stuck, I'm like by myself. Like it is, and within city borders, like that's the craziest part is they talk about a lot of like people die from exposure, but like still in the city.
And how did you?
Yeah.
'Cause there was no cell service. You said, like, how did you communicate with each other? Going back to
I'll
going back
meet-
to savings on that.
Yeah, just I'll meet you there. Yeah,
Like in the
everything.
olden days.
It's so funny. There was this service, I never ended up using it, but if you listen to the radio at like every hour or whatever, people could call in and say what they were selling on the radio, like it was like the 50s. And people would just be like, oh, I'm selling a pair of skates. And then they would leave their phone number. Like, and they'd be like, okay, call that person. So I would always listen and be like, maybe it'll be something I want. But it was such a funny, and people would not say the full area, like just the 7 digits. phone number because everyone lives there. Also, I found kind of hard is no one would answer my phone calls because I had a Toronto area code. I had to get my art director to call no businesses. No one would ever answer my phone calls.
Is that because
Yeah.
it was long distance or because it was just a kind of a
I
prejudice or a chauvinist?
I think a lot of people there are guarded. I don't know if like there's been times I've shot other places in Ontario where I say I'm working with a film and people get very excited. People are not that excited. Like you would ask, just be like, "Oh, we're doing this movie," and they'd be like, "Nah, it's not worth my time." Like they weren't as excited of having a film crew there.
Mhm.
I think it's a very close. A lot of people move up there because it's like
Hmm.
I don't know, they like their privacy.
Oh,
How
okay.
about like your tools or whatever your comfort that did you bring some or materials or your tapes or is you just
I did bring some stuff, but again, I very quickly realized everyone there has like entire workshop worth of stuff. Like everyone there was totally handy. Like my lowest position trainee person could be more handy than anyone I've ever met. So that was very cool.
Hmm. Were they people that had worked on maybe some other film before, or was it more like you need someone to help, this person's handy, and it was kind of word of mouth, kind of gathering people together in that
A
way?
lot of them had worked on things, like they had worked on what's that show? Amazing Race Canada. I had a bunch of people who worked on that and like random things that will shoot up there. There's kind of the same people. A lot of them were freelance artists. So
Hmm.
like two of my people, actually my art director and my props master were snow sculptors. So they would do like big like snow sculptures and they go around Canada doing that with like chainsaws and stuff. That was very cool.
Right, right, right. Yeah. So because it's sort of somewhat connected, Andy,
Mhm.
you want to talk a little bit more about North of North, and we see if I have any particular like the vehicular access or like
Yeah.
paint drying, the power. I mean, again, because it's a bit of a city, there's probably a hardware store or something like that, but just like the challenges in the high.
Yeah, again, there's lots of similarities, but there's sort of striking differences too. Yes, so Iqaluit's the capital of Nunavut, but it's still quite a small place. I don't think there's more than 25 or 30,000 people. It's the population fluctuates quite a bit with people coming in and out, and people won't consider you as properly from there, even if you've been there for 10 or 20 years, if you're not, if you don't integrate. So it's a funny place. But the distances that Mercedes is talking about, we were not getting that far out. Our concentric circle outside of sort of town, there's no roads that go out of town. There's nowhere else to go except by air or by snowmobile. And getting a crew on a snowmobile, I think logistically was just really beyond the capability of a road. So we'd sort of look at this vista here, 270 degrees, and have the unit, no more than 100 meters behind us.
Mm-hmm. No hills to hide
to
behind.
get out really. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, we had a sort of crash scene where one of the hunters has been out on the land and has an accident and he's lost. So he had to flip, but it was literally sort of the end of the road, walk 100 meters. Because the logistics of supporting a crew that far are just not there. Like there's no porta potties in town to be rented, for example. We're shuttling people back and forth, and they're your full Arctic gear. You're in several layers
hop on the
of
Skidoo
clothing,
shuttle back.
and so well, we'd get into cars and shuttle to town. Like it's amazing how sort of small an area we could actually cover, and how sort of vast we could sort of make it feel. And we were trying to do a small town as well, so we sort of choose these smaller little hamlet that's connected to the more, urban center. These words don't really describe what it was, but as far as skill sets go, similar to Mercedes. Most of the people who are interested in working on a film, and we brought up a fair bit of crew and hired crew as well. The people that we hired, some of them had film experience. A few productions have been through in the last few years. Mostly artisans that were interested in with expanded skills. I found that everybody there tended to have like 3 jobs. You know, I'm a caterer, I'm a jewelry maker, and I also I'm a props person kind of thing. So, but that sort of let's get done attitude was
I
a
think
big part.
that's
The
the sense is
logistics of building
that's the reality
materials.
across Canada. Like in Newfoundland, that's the case, and it's Toronto and Vancouver are the exceptions to the rule in terms of that. I think.
Yeah, certainly smaller jurisdictions in Canada, I find people are much more willing to wear 2 hats, right? Like if you want to be a film technician, you could be a gaffer and a carpenter just because you need to make a living. Right? So I found that true in many places, that are not our film centers for sure.
Mhm.
But
And
just
again, the way you guys,
because
sorry, cutting out. You're kind of freezing. every once in a
my
while.
connection bad.
Well, yeah, it's kind of, you're freezing it
Yeah,
once.
I just right. Yeah, might be the time of day everyone is using the Wi-Fi in Arena here.
Again,
One of the big things that we had to
reminder to our
overcome.
audience, Andy's on a boat on Lake Ontario.
The logistics of getting construction materials was the first real hurdle with North of North. I did have the opportunity to do a scout week beforehand and realized really quickly that we went up in the end of January. We were good until the end of June. Between those times, nothing cuts into the city except by air. There's no roads, and the seaps only happen when the ocean is clear of ice. So I had consulted on the job beforehand, and I sent building materials. I didn't have the design job. I knew they were going to build sets. No matter what, you're going to need floors. You're going to need 1x3. You're going to need 2x4. So we just set up a ton of materials and fasteners on the last ship. The fasteners I sent up became like gold because I had all the screws in town. I had more plywood in town than the hardware store. So then it became a sort of barter. I need this. I got this kind of thing.
In the back alley.
But it was well, at the Legion, there's only ways to meet people. But yeah, then the we pre-built the set in stage in Toronto, then flat packed it and put it in a plane and shipped it out. And we literally, I tell the story all the time, we built the silhouette of the silhouette. So we knew every skid was going to fit and exactly how it would fit in the plane. My construction coordinator, my art director really spearheaded that. It was incredible. It was amazing. We used up too little space on the plane. We're going to costume department. This stuff to put on the plane. So it was
wow.
Yeah, a huge, but one of those logistics things that's a real pleasure to get through.
What did you use as a studio? And Mercedes, you referenced a studio set too. So in both your cases, we know there's not studios like in the urban sense of a studio. So what did you both use for your studio set?
We used the curling rink.
Wow.
Second time.
We used the shop where we got our rental trucks from. So it was actually supposedly a pretty good studio. It didn't look much different than an actual regular studio, but yeah, it was where all the rental car companies came from.
So, and then how long were you up there for? Until June, you said, right, Andy? So you kind of saw the trend.
Yeah, we were up about 5 or 6 months.
Right. Yeah. No, it's and so again, what about power? What did you use for power? Like how did you
Never had to go that far, so we used gas jennies. We had to, but our stories were mostly driven. I mean, stories of the Arctic a lot, and then when you're outside, as I say, we could fake it pretty close to town. So, but we use jennies.
I'm going to throw a pitch in for like just in future, or for anyone who's out there watching this in a situation like this, there's a lot of like solar generated generators now. So it's something to think about when you're in these remote places, because there's lots of, well, actually it depends on the time of year, doesn't it? Because there really wasn't much sun where you were, Mercedes. There was only a few hours Like the day, and same
Yeah.
with you, probably, Andy, right?
Yeah,
Yeah.
we had only
Did
a
you
few hours
have-
of daylight, but then by June it was all sun though. So yeah, then it would really work
Did
well.
you have
Something to think about.
did you have total darkness for any of it, or close to?
Not total darkness. I did my first recce the first week of December, and then my second I took art director up just after the first week of January or second week of January. So sort of 3 weeks either way of the solstice. That was just I got to the darkest time. And it was
Mhm.
about what you were describing, like maybe 10 or
Yeah.
11 a.m. to about 3 p.m. of like light-ish.
Yeah, we had that, then we hit the upswing, and then every day added 10 minutes. So by the first shoot week, we only could shoot for 8 hours, which was great for me. I love a short shoot
Yeah.
day. So we the first week we were shooting like 8-hour days, and then by the
Mm.
last week we got up to full days.
I want to sort of start segueing towards the question I have for Yola, but I want to kind of leading out of Andy's is you said you also worked on something called the Egyptian Job that was shot in Morocco.
Yeah.
Remote location on the edge of the Sahara Desert. And
Yeah.
I mean, it sounds like that wasn't a sort of low budget show, but there was a legacy filmmaking infrastructure. But I'm just wondering, even given that, what were the differences in terms of departmental organization, union, non-union, and that cultural difference that Yola talked about when at the start when
Yeah.
your comment?
Yeah, that was a while ago. So that was a British Canadian co-production shot in Morocco. It was sort of an ancient Egypt story.
Oh,
Documentary.
the Egyptian Job, I didn't mention.
The Egyptian Job, yeah, sort of following a famous tomb robbery, and so sort of made up a fictional character, sort of like the Italian Job, this Egyptian Job, imagining of how these guys did it and all of that. Yeah, so it's a place called Ouarzazate, which is right at the edge of the Sahara Desert, and Lawrence of Arabia was the first thing shot there. So I guess there was some sort of small infrastructure left behind, and that kernel has grown a lot of sword and sandals stuff from the British side of things gets shot there. I think Gladiator, some of the stuff there, Kingdom of Heaven was shot there. Ridley Scott, I think, really likes it. So there were some giant sets left behind by huge productions that then these smaller productions like we were sort of come in and sort of use, and the infrastructure left behind, like special effects gear and stuff. So the guys that we were hiring as keys were sort of working as techs on these really large productions, and it was an interesting place. I had really good sculptor team, really good art team, and then not a lot of carpenters. So you sort of just find how to make things happen. We ended up sculpting a lot of props out of clay or even out of wood, and then scenicking them to look like metal because we couldn't fabricate. It was a fascinating place to be.
Did that again going leading into Yola's conversation about or comment about just the cultural blending, like having to deal with that, like because it was a legacy film industry community, was that not so much a part of it? You didn't have to kind of navigate that as much?
Yeah. Like the folks that I was working with locally, they were all film professionals, and they sort of worked on, like as I say, they worked really junior on really big productions or really high up on smaller productions, and that's sort of how they all made a living, oscillating back and forth. So they all spoke English really quite well, or French, because it's a former French colony. So we communicated almost entirely in English, and then French if we had to, if we couldn't get there in English. And there were very few folks that didn't speak either of those languages, or at least that I was dealing with directly for work. So yeah, it was an interesting place to be. It was my first sort of job really far away from home. I'd been used to working with jurisdictions, especially the British, but this was sort of kind of European, kind of, it was just different. The sandbags come to set empty, like just sort of weird little control things, like you're in the desert, why would we ship sand around?
Yeah, I mean, just on that, like the Sahara Desert's massive, and like I guess was it already figured out for decades of how to like deal with like sifting sands and stuff like that, and they just gave you the Coles notes on how to deal with that, or
yeah, a lot of what we were using, like, so there's ancient mud constructions, they've been there for hundreds of years. They're still occupied. They're still used. And so a lot of that is what we're using as a backdrop. So it's not like it's an uninhabited place. It's just a place that is very harsh, and not a lot of you don't go there to film. You go there for a very specific reason. You need
Were you
desert.
there for the whole
Desert,
shoot?
and the Atlas Mountains off in the distance. We did studio work in Toronto, and then the rest of the shoot was there. It's a while ago now. I forget how long we were there. It was a couple of months.
Okay.
It was 15 years ago. I was there just around my son's birthday.
Oh, good marker. And so just segueing into Yola, I mean, because you were in Cyprus, I guess what, in the last year or so for the Ma fille tout sera libre, / You Will Be Free. Again, a modest Canadian film, under $4 million. So yeah, why don't you talk a little bit about that, because yours is more recent and perhaps not in an area of the world where the film industry is quite so established. So anyway, just love to hear about your experience there.
So one of the things that I found the hardest, I would say, was the prep, actually prepping. Like we went scouting in February, and then we saw these places traveling, and there's someone driving us everywhere. And then once we plan everything, we're like, okay, we're gonna do this there, that set. And it's all from pictures that we took like 3 months ago. And then we plan something that we're gonna go back in another 3-4 months. And then it's a bit far away in your head, and then communicating all that to your team and remembering that the space, that was like extremely hard to do. And also one of the things is that in Cyprus they're Greek, so they speak Greek. I'm a French Canadian who speaks English but is more comfortable in French in my like in my work, in my field. So communicating that to them, but talking about a culture, an Afghan culture, because it's about an Afghan family. We were
That's kind of your story.
in the story, we were cheating Afghanistan in Cyprus. So then communicating another culture that was like, and trying to be truthful to like all the people who helped us, the consultants, the Afghan consultants, and honoring the story, and making sure we were not gonna go into cliches. So
Yeah.
that was like the whole challenge of that part.
And so language-wise, so there's Greek language in your host country.
Yeah.
So they had a translator working with you or assistant?
Well, they speak English also, so it was, but some crew members didn't speak very well. So but no, there was no translators.
And does it, focusing on the crew part of it, not the story you're telling, and did it structure, like, again, it didn't really, well, because you guys were working, the story you guys were talking about, Andy and Mercedes were in Canada. So it was quite union DPC stories, but was yours non-union? Like that's been my experience, like in South Africa and Poland, really experienced film people, but no union. So everything gets structured quite differently.
It wasn't union, if I remember correctly. So yeah, the structure is different. And even like understanding the team, like even within Canada, sometimes like compared to Quebec, sometimes I find it difficult to explain it to other people who what people do, what's their job. No, that person in the way we work, they do that, and then other places there's more like, oh, but we could also do that, and we can also do that. So it's just like restructuring my structure in my brain, how it works. So that was trying to understand all from a distance. That whole prep was like emails and Zooms, and all that was more difficult than being there and just seeing it and understanding the structure and meeting the people. Because
was your team, you mentioned your team, where's your team? Did you have a team in Montreal and in Cyprus?
well, we shot most of the movie, like we were shooting two weeks in Cyprus, and I was there a month, so 2 weeks prep, 2 weeks shoot. And I had my art director who followed me, and then that's it. It was just the two of us. And so what was the question?
Well, like your team, your friends reference your team. So really the question is
Came over there, yeah.
Like half, like you found local people as, and.
Yeah, the production company, I had somebody, and then actually the shoot was postponed. So I had someone, but then she was not available for the shoot later. And then so it was someone else that I had met. But then it was building a new relationship with that person. Um, and it went really well. It's just it takes some time.
Mhm.
Takes some time, I find. And
Yeah,
it's all crunched up, and yeah, I find it's a nice challenge. It's you develop skills that you didn't know you had.
yeah, no, I agree with that. I mean, with Andy and Mercedes, it sounds like from what you've described too, it's like it wasn't, it was hard, but it was like invigorating as well. You know, not dealing with this. Yeah. So going back to your situation in Cyprus, so your art director from Montreal came with you for that, but everyone else you have to find locally.
But I had a main person there who then she sourced the crew.
Okay.
Then
Is
and
there a kind of local art director type of?
yes, absolutely. And she was amazing. And she had been doing this for the longest time, so she knew a lot of people. We didn't
Okay.
necessarily get the like the crew that she had in mind. There was other productions at the time, and so there's not that many crew. So there was a few people who was like kind of starting. So then you have to also do a few crash courses to a few crew members over there of how you expect things to be or how you want things to be. So,
What about things like, typical art department things, like, did you work paperlessly because there wasn't the printers and the
oh,
infrastructure
no,
and
no,
stuff?
I mean, no, that we had that. The we had like a really nice our base or art base was in a garage, so that was really cool. It had just been emptied, and we just had it was a great vibe to work in.
Mhm.
Even though I wasn't there that much, it was more my art director who was there, and I was constantly on the road. And that's the other thing. It's the distance that we forget sometimes, or we don't understand how bringing stuff in that location that we love all the way over there, it's very complex to get stuff there and building and like the logistics that you get involved and you're like, but we want that. You're like, yeah, but it's complicated. So
Yeah,
that's
more complicated than in Canada, for example, or in the southern belt of Canada.
yeah.
Like just give an example of, pictures. Sorry, Andy, we didn't show any of your pictures. So we'll go back but while we're on,
Oh,
do you want
right.
to put some pictures?
Um, I mean, do you want to go? So there's one maybe picture, sorry. Um, Habiba's house. So that's a location where that's like an abandoned village. Um, Habiba 06. Yeah. So that was an abandoned village. And there was like one farm family. And this place was full of animal dunk. Like it was just filled. It was like the whole floor. So when we first visited, we're like, oh, there's tons of earth, but it was something else that we discovered eventually. And then we had to have that clean. And so it was like a lot of steps to to create what we wanted. And I'm I'm not sure I brought up the right pictures, seeing the Mercedes pictures. But the what I wanted to say is that um, the the work that was done to create the set eventually, um, there was so many layers. Like in the months, we had to hack down some weeds to get to that location, and then the pictures and the measurements. Even the measurements. It's not the same measurements like the way they measure things than we measure things. So getting plans, that was
Mm.
another complicated thing.
So
but
explain that a little bit more. What's different?
all centimeters and just measuring. I don't think the people who the first crew had the, let's say, the I'm not sure, like the qualifications or like how to measure to make a plan so that we could work with that space. But if we want to see the other picture, that's like in the end the set what it looked like. So we painted everything. We don't see it, but from I should have put the one of the first pictures. I didn't want to go too crass, but like it just um changes a lot in where we started and where it ended up, and how the actors were very happy with the sets. They were like, "Oh my God, this is like my village." You know, that was very humbling to see that we were able, with all these little complicated things that pile up, pile up, pile up, how we were able to give the movie what was necessary. But I
And how many spaces of this size and stuff did you have to like in that village?
yeah,
Did you have to
there
take?
was no electricity, and it was very hard to get there. There was like trucks couldn't go everywhere, and transporting things was complicated. Um, there was no restaurants or like bathrooms. You just had to do your duty somewhere. So all that, those complications were, and that was really far to get there. It was like from the base, the art base, that was like a 3-4 hour drive just to
Wow.
get there. So
Wow.
we had to move
Wow.
everything, you know, to get there.
And that was the main location when you were in Cyprus, is that right?
That is one of the locations.
One of them.
It's not the
Okay,
main
one of
location.
them. Yeah. It's not really a question, there's a comment in the chat, and it's just worth kind of mentioning. Being a woman in that culture, 'cause a friend of mine, just even spent a few months in Cyprus, and it's different, like culturally it's different. Like, did you find any, being a female in charge of a department, that was something that you had to kind of constantly assert yourself, or?
A tiny bit, but my art director over there was a woman. So, and they respected her. So I think
The local
the
person.
local, yeah. So um there's a few people where maybe there was like, hey, come on, you have to, you know, this is what we need, this is what we want. But no, it was people were really nice and
Yeah.
sharing everything. No, it wasn't that hard for me.
I just want to go back to, like, you mentioned how, again, again, in films like based in, anywhere in the southern belt of Canada, if you have someone who's going out to measure your locations, you expect or anticipate them to know what to do, and also to translate that into a drawing, either by hand or digitally or something. So I think that, but that's a real, again, just from personal experience, like, you can't assume that that is the case everywhere, even though.
Never assume.
Yeah. So, like, I just remember in South Africa, like, again, very strong filmmaking legacy, and my art director there very, like, worked on some big shows, but she had a completely different skill base than we'd expect. She didn't do budget. She didn't even know how to look at an Excel sheet. She didn't know how to draft. She was a really great illustrator, and she obviously was a great coordinator of things. But it was just interesting. Like, she didn't really have any of the, for a modest show, any of the skills that you'd think someone on a modest show would need to have as an art director, like a little bit of knowledge on everything. So anyways, I think it's a lesson in both humility and openness. I think when we work in these situations, it's just like, rather than getting too trapped in our own expectations of how things are supposed to be. So,
And trying to find ways to explain things the way so that they could understand what you want also.
yeah.
It's, yeah, the communication, like loads of references and boards and in details, like a page only for one accessory, and like tons, like we built like a file, like a huge file to explain everything we were taught about the culture, because again, it was another culture that was not our own, or that was far away from a bit of everyone there.
So again, that's the storytelling layer on top of the practical
Sorry.
realization layer. No, it's fine. It's all important. It's all good. It just I want to move into questions if there are any in about 10 minutes, but there's more things I want to ask about. And I want to focus on what your experiences are working remotely and stuff, but because I think sustainability is such an important thing, not just to me personally, but in our industry, I'm just wondering if, is there, again, given the fraughtness and the challenges that you're up under on so many levels, it probably isn't like something you're is at the top of the list or even on the list. And Mercedes example, of course, you got to build the set from stuff and then put it back. But I'm just wondering, like, given those the different kinds of experiences you've all had working remotely, are there things that stand out as things that are actually already happening, or that you could actually embrace just because of the situation, as in Mercedes' case, or things you like if it was to happen again, things you might be able to do? It's not, I'm not looking for like a specific answer. It's more just like a thought bubbling kind of idea, whether it's like again solar generators or like whatever. Like it's kind of and having some responsibility for like the stuff you're making. Then what happened? Did you think about what happened to it at the end, or where did it go? That kind of.
Well, in my case, Cyprus is an island, so even the people over there are very conscious of their own land and like, so their ecosystem. So it was very, they're like, oh, we're gonna reuse this. Like there's a lot of stuff that we just grabbed from our builder, our carpenter. He had a huge scrap land, and it's all old sets, and we were reusing stuff. So even in their culture, they're like wanting to reuse things. And I was seeing things like, oh, that's so cool. And you're like, oh, that's from that movie that was done 25 years ago. And we're like, let's use it for that. So
Fantastic.
yeah, so to have access to that was amazing, actually.
Yeah, that is great. And but it was kind of ad hoc. It sounds like it was just this kind of like cluster of things this person happened to have.
Yes.
Yeah. Mercedes, Andy, any thoughts on that stuff?
Yeah, like
for brownie points, it's just more like a
yeah, like I mentioned, a lot of our stuff came from the dump already and was reused. But even the sets, so like that cabin set, for example, I did build it again in studio for the interior. So that was built proper out of like proper lumber. And at the end, my props master ended up taking all of it home to build a greenhouse. So like nothing got thrown out that wasn't like the stuff we got for the dump eventually got returned back to the dump, but nothing was, I guess, created garbage. We generally like everyone wanted to use a piece of it.
I think like Yola mentioned, like these remote places are sort of the end of the line, right? Or they're an island of sorts anyway. So the local sensibility, in my experience, almost everywhere has been, oh, you're throwing that out? Kind of like you'd be crazy to. This can be something useful at some point down the road, and so I've found that's been my experience. A few different places, like nothing really gets wasted unless it's truly garbage. Like some things are finally just firewood, and then they get burned. But the reuse mentality is very strong.
And same in Callaway where you were as well.
Iqaluit was very much that way. Like every, and the construction materials that we had just got used. Like, if we had anything that was even close to going near the garbage, someone had a use for it. We folded and held all the sets there, so there wasn't a lot of waste created that way anyway. But the usual cast off bits, they really all got used up, and then as we got into the summer season, it became bonfire season, and then everything that was wood really got burned.
So, I mean, is it still up there waiting for a second season, or is it going into the second season?
Yeah, and I think we might be figuring out how to get it back down south again and do studio work here. Anyway, yeah.
Anyways, it's part of just,
But yeah.
anyway, that's.
Yeah,
I mean,
it is in a
great
warehouse.
show.
It is in the former Canada Post facility there in storage.
Yeah. So I think just trying to want to move into some questions very shortly, but just going back to like the things that stand out. So, and then again, I'll go around to each of you, but what's the best overall part of the remote working experience, despite the challenges, and how would you encourage your other like our attendees to work away from home? So what kind of generally, not a specific example, but more like what do you feel has made you a better designer, a better person, a stronger person, a stronger designer, whatever, anything that falls into that category of the benefit of the remote working, the challenging remote working experience. So Mercedes, you want to talk about it?
Yeah, I think it's the learning how to do things a different way that you not normally wouldn't do, being one of them. And then also the not falling back on the things you always do, I guess. Like I know that what set dressing is out there in Toronto, and I find myself like often like I'll get into a rhythm of picking the same couches or the same whatever. So it's really nice to be forced to be like, okay, I actually don't know what's out there, and I have to relearn the city, and I feel like it really pulls like on your creative strengths, I guess.
Yeah, that's a great one. Yeah. What about you, Andy?
I think all the examples that you mentioned, does it make you a stronger designer, does it make you a stronger person? I think the answer to those is yes. I think we probably all similarly are attracted to this as a profession because we enjoy challenges and we enjoy learning. And like Mercedes said, like when you're completely outside your comfort zone, you don't have your usual crew, you don't have, a Home Depot anywhere within 1,000 miles. It really does force you to look at things from a really new way, and you're likely in a different culture. Yeah, I think it really helps you grow as a designer and a person. Even just thinking like it's all logistics, as Yola was saying, right? It's all logistics. We don't worry about the logistics when we're in Montreal or in Vancouver or in Toronto because someone else worries about that. It's just done. But it becomes such a huge part, and it even informs the design. Like if you're going to move a piece of a spaceship onto the tableland of Gross Morn, how do you do that? And how does that fit into the whole spaceship, right? Or your cabin that you're gonna have to build in studio as well as the exterior. Well, is it 40 tires or is it 20 tires? Like it's those little things that start addressing your actual design choices, right? So I think it forces you to do things in a different way. And I think that makes you better. Yeah.
Actually, because we didn't look at any of your pictures before, and just if you remember, do you have a few pictures of Secret Planet? Because that's pretty interesting. Like, you say you had to you couldn't even drive stuff into the middle of the tableland. I pictured you with a wheelbarrow.
For good reason, yeah. Sure. Julian, Naya's Airlock, Gross Morn.
So this is a film that Andy shot in Gross Morn National Park, which is this massive thing where the tectonic plates were kind of discovered. Fantastic. If anyone seen that is interesting.
Yeah, you got it. That's a good segue. Yeah.
Fantastic.
Yeah. The two tectonic plates sort of collided, and then the bottom of one of the plates is scraped up. So you get this landscape. It looks very Martian. And so, I took this shot sort of to show the ridiculousness of what we do. If you can see right in the middle on the horizon, if you zoom in, there's a person in a yellow jumpsuit, and she's beside this copper spaceship hull, this little piece. So to me, this is just the ridiculousness of what we do, right? So we built this little piece of a spaceship. We brought it out in the middle of nowhere. This is shot from about halfway the distance we had to carry this thing. And and there's a group of 20 adults all focused on this one little thing.
Monitor.
Yeah. There's another image, Julian, called just Airlock Gross Morn, which shows, I think, a bit more of the landscape. But we came here to get this sort of Martian landscape and then the sort of treeless mountains in the background. And this same Airlock set piece, we moved to a few different places. The part of the story is it's a prison planet. There's two different prisoners. They live in the exact same two different versions of the exact same prison capsule. So we moved the airlock around to different places so that we could get that transition point of moving in and out of these spaces in different environments. And then we shot everything in air quote studio, another curling rink in St. John.
Like how far
there's
is
an
this
image Julian called.
How far is this site from the road? Like how far did you have to walk in to?
So the road, okay, so we rented our rooms at the Grossmorn Inn, which is right cusping the park, the tableland. So we could drive on side by sides up this sort of old logging road for a couple of kilometers, right to the edge of the tablelands, and then from that point we had to carry everything in, and it was less than a kilometer, but more than half a kilometer. So that airlock came apart in a few different pieces. You can see on this image, it's the part with the stairs. So this, and because we were low budget, there wasn't building 2 or 3 of these. We built one airlock that sort of slid in and out of this main set that was sitting in the Ballyhally curling rink right here. And then in this stage, we dressed, about 180 degrees outside of this pod, and then had a photo backdrop, so we could do all of our interiors nicely and get sort of really close stuff around the pod. And then for the bigger landscapes, we took the airlock out so we could CG the rest of the, we just had the door to interact with, and then CG the rest of the spaceship in. It was an adventure. We had to ford streams, good Newfoundlander Bayman know-how, shipping skids, pallets, just fill a creek bank, and then you could ford the river towing this god awful thing on a trailer. It was kind of insane. But yeah, it was a lot of fun.
Yeah. Carrying on with going back to the best experience, we already answered that. I'm going to Yola. So what's your kind of overall kind of idea of why working away from home is actually a very valuable experience?
I might sound cheesy, but it's truly what I think. It's just the people, like meeting the people, and like our days off, and then connecting with these people. And because I'm far away from home, I'm just there. I'm fully there to immerse myself in their culture. So it's like everything, the learning, the food, and exploring. It's just there. We didn't have that many days off, so the little moments where you get to have a lunch, and then on like the landscape that you explore, and then they're like, this is my home, and you're like, wow, your home is amazing. The sharing, just the sharing with humans. And then also we talk about film. We love film, so it's just the best experience ever.
Doesn't sound cheesy at all. It sounds fantastic. Generally, what advice can you give our audience should they be in a situation where they're working away from home without their usual team or resources, or perhaps even language? I mean, you've kind of already expressed it, I think, but maybe just as not parting, because we'll go to some questions if there are any out in the attendees. But what advice, little gems of wisdom, would you give someone? So, Andy.
Geez, I don't know. Be open. Like, just like, we do our meticulous research and all that, and then we end up in this place, and then you end up learning so much more really just by being there. And I think, being able to absorb that and not hold preciously to your preconceived thoughts, because it's not going to be what you thought. The room might not even be the same size as Yola described.
Right. And Mercedes?
Yeah, same. And I guess just trust the people that are there for you. Generally, people want to be working and want to be doing a good job. Nobody takes a job at in places like this that don't want to be doing it. So trust that they are going to be giving you their best options.
Good. Yola?
All of that and prepping. Prepping for me, well, in my certain case was communicating something. It was about the culture over there. So for me, it was communicating the culture. So I had to, yeah, prepping the documents and make it as clear as possible, and then we'll see, you know, yeah, uh, go with the flow kind of thing, you know.
Open to adjustment.
Yeah.
Yeah. You know, it's interesting, just sort of on like it's like you practical note. Many years ago, I was working with Francois Seguin, a Montreal, amazing Montreal designer, and you know he worked all over the world and stuff. And when it came to like tools and prep, and this is before digital and all that stuff way back, he traveled with a one what do you call it, triangle. That's all he traveled with in terms of his kit. If he just assumed that people where he was going would have stuff, or he'd just figure it out, or he'd just respond to again the situation at hand, you know. But he never he traveled with this like a one little triangle.
Like that.
So I don't see any questions listed, but I just want to open it to the floor. If there are anyone, is there anyone out there that has any questions? I don't even see it in the bottom of my thing. I don't even see the question section. So do I have to open my screen wider? I don't. Oh, there it is. You know, there are no questions actually. So that's great. I guess we've been explaining it really well. But let's keep talking about things. Yeah. And any other situations we haven't talked about that you've worked on that you know, I think, oh yeah, that really weird thing happened, or that really dangerous thing happened, but I got through it, or you know. No. Andy, you look like you have something.
No.
No, no, yeah, Julie and I see that. No, it's interesting because I mean I think it was more just like an insightful kind of peek in. So it's not surprising maybe that there aren't questions, but oh, here's a question that's in the chat. Is it any easier to do research when you're in the place interacting with people face to face?
Absolutely.
Yeah, I'd say yes.
Yes. And seeing what is available. Because then you're like, no, but can you go look for more? And they're like, no. And then you actually see, no, that's it.
Yeah, it's really, that is, and again, like in here we rely on Home Depot and IKEA, whatever the kind of genre, the prop houses or something. But yeah, I remember when I was working in Cape Town, and we went to some shop. I don't know what it didn't have a name. It wasn't Home Depot or anything. But wow, they just had this whole different range, like kind of different things to deal with a different climate. They had different kinds of fencing and paneling and whatever, just different materials based on what was available locally in terms of manufactured and natural, but also what the climate needed, what the culture needed. So it's really important and exciting actually to sort of tap into the resources that are at hand, you know, that are available. Yeah, so I mean, it kind of looks like going back to your spaceship that you built for Grossmorin. So that was really built in St. John's, and then you took it out.
Yeah.
Right. And in St. John's, it pretty much has everything like that. But was there anything like on that show or some other show where it's like, okay, where I am doesn't have any of this stuff, but it does have this other thing?
I think, well, just as you were asking that question, and as Yola was speaking, just thinking about this question, doing the research in situ rather than elsewhere, in a gallery, looking for, doing the planning, doing the prep, and knowing that carvings are a big part of the culture, and I have to decorate a lot of these interior spaces, and the homes that I was visiting had beautiful carvings because someone that they knew did them, or maybe a relative or something. But these are expensive. These are really expensive to buy retail, certainly if you're down south in Toronto. But then being there in the place, very quickly met people who were making sculptures, and then suddenly you have this relationship where, oh, now I'm getting custom works, and not that expensive.
For north of north.
Sorry, this is for north and north up in Calgary. So little things like that, or things, I find it mostly with the artisanal works, suddenly, oh, you're face to face with people. Oh, I'm meeting a guy. Oh, you make this. Oh, your uncle makes this.
So you can embrace it as a designer.
The whole world, the whole world is open up suddenly. That was seemed like this narrow door, but actually it's, or handmade clothing or handmade decorations. All these things that just seem so unattainable as an outsider, suddenly when you get in, it's like, oh my goodness, it's all there, it's all available.
Right, yeah, that's wow. What about Mercedes? I mean, it sounds like you've already described that to some extent, but any kind of specific example, like, wow.
Yeah, same with the like, just, you know, I'd be talking to the art director being like, I have all these plans of how I was going to do things, and he'd be like, I need you to get here to see what you're actually up against. And yeah.
There's a question here from Kyla Chatterjee. How do you find the opportunities to design abroad? That's a kind of a bigger art question, but go for it. Yeah.
I don't know, you can't make the phone ring.
Yeah. That's a good question. I don't know how to answer that, but I guess I don't know.
Yeah, because it isn't something they can predict, you know. It's like you could sort of
No.
say, look at directors who tend to work in unusual places, or you know, whatever, because of the storylines they do or whatever, and then just kind of point your boat in that.
I try to let everyone know I have a EU passport. It has not worked yet, but I am hoping that one day that will be beneficial and somebody
True.
will bring me over. Yeah.
Yeah, maybe just putting it out there, just talking about it, saying it, that you want that.
Being
And I
open
think
to it.
if you have a language, like a EU passport or a language, like a friend of mine, she's Canadian, but she lived in Spain for 5 years when she was, you know, in her early 20s. And so, you know, she's gone to Spain quite often to work on shows because it's just very handy to have someone who's fluent. So those kind of special skills can, you know, if you sort of make that known, that can help.
Or maybe even, you know, connecting with production designers or decorators or from other countries, and then maybe that will open doors, or like just knowing people elsewhere and how other people work. I think that could also maybe be a door to connecting and having knowledge to work abroad.
Yeah, it's really hard to predict. I mean, I guess some people predict and plan their careers, but mostly it's like good to stay loose. Okay. Oh, Emily Bendick Garay wants to hear more about the curling rink in North of North. How did that work with the locals? Does that mean they didn't get to use their curling? Is that what your question is about? Or maybe you can answer that as part of it.
Yeah, there was a bit of the production company was meant to have a studio ready for us. The Northern, it was sort of part of their deal, but the studio was not ready. So Plan B was the curling rink. Yes, we did displace the curling team. Yes, Nunavut did not get to compete nationally that year. No one tried to beat me up in the Legion. That was one of my fears, but we did take away like one real source of entertainment for a whole community. There was a lot of guilt around that. Yeah.
You hired, I mean, I've watched this series. I mean, it strikes me that there's a lot of scenes where lots of locals would have been hired for crowd scenes.
Yeah.
So was that
we did,
a positive experience?
Yeah, I mean, casting, you know, that would be a whole nother thing, and I'm certainly not the one to talk about it, but it was a real deal. Kind of like Mercedes was saying that the radio station in Yukon had this sort of community service element. Facebook was massive in Iqaluit. Like literally, if anyone's seen Johnny, tell him his lunch is getting cold on Facebook. Like this is how it goes. And like, is this your cell phone? I found it outside North Mart, or are these your keys? All the time. Is this your dog? I brought her inside. She was cold. On Facebook all the time. So casting sort of happened that way. A lot of sourcing materials, like, do you have an old couch? Because we're dressing a set, you know, we're sort of cast these couches on Facebook. I lost that train of thought.
Well, just right about the curling rink and how it just
yeah. When
it
casting, but yeah, it impacted the community. Like it was a real thing. But yes, we sort of, I think what your question was leading was, did we add back a bit? Yeah, people were very excited to have us there, very excited to come and participate in the community scenes. You know, not without its own trials and tribulations. But yeah, there was an impact. There was a real negative impact. I felt really bad about that, actually, that the curling rink was gone.
Yeah, I can imagine. I mean, I'm not a curler, but I can imagine.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, Yeah, any other kind of party thoughts you guys want? Again, going back to like just your wealth of experiences and the things that stand out as again, like it could be a dramatic moment or just like again the gem of information or what you travel with, maybe going back or just touching on the kit, like what do you travel with, like net these days, mostly in the computer now probably, but
We brought
Yeah,
tapes,
what
a few tapes.
you mean, like snot tape type tapes?
I don't know how you say it elsewhere in Canada, but we call it like dum dum, like the really transparent, sticky.
Snot tape.
yeah, it's not tape. Yeah,
Uh,
I've traveled with not
shipped
tape.
tough back.
Yeah.
I shipped tough back to Cape Town because they've never anything like that. So yeah, booger tape, someone saying, yeah.
Booger tapes.
But yeah, so like that, those kind of things again that we just take for granted, you know, you just have to know that when you go,
Yeah.
have them. So
And I think just as a parting thought, like the reason that we travel to these weird places for film is because they are unique, right? So we're going there to get this one specific look or amalgam of different looks to make the show. So to get the opportunity to go and to have someone pay you to go, and if you're lucky enough to go scout and then go prep and then shoot and go through that whole process, you know, it's really incredible. And you know, you can't make the phone ring, but if you get the opportunity, I would highly recommend jumping on.
yeah, and don't, and again, I think it would become clear from what you guys have expressed. If you're in a position like, you know, production designer positions or head of department, I mean, you can't bring your crew, so what? You'll meet some fabulous people locally, you know.
Yeah.
If you can't, you know, because a lot of people are really like, well, I have to have my team with me, and it's just like.
On that note, also, I was really bummed about not bringing my crew, and then after shooting, I was like, oh, this wouldn't have gotten done if I had brought my crew. Like my art director was this wonderful gentleman in his 70s who knew everyone, every single person, so much of the stuff. We built this like rusty metal cage thing, and he actually got the welding college students to build it for us for free. So there's just things like that, just that would have never happened if I had been really like, I need my people. Like we would have been just sitting in the middle of the woods, not knowing how to do anything.
I think that's just such an important thing to learn, you know. Just how much how many resources are available, different resources perhaps, but yeah. Anyway, so I mean, this has been great. It's been really interesting hearing your own experiences about working abroad, and you know, of course, you know, for me, it's affirming because it's kind of like it's different but similar, and I don't know in terms of who's attending today, like maybe this is new information for them, but if so, I hope it's opened up your eyes and ears to possibilities out there for your futures and in your present perhaps. But yeah, thanks so much, you guys, for your time.
Thank you.
And for your contributions. It was really generous of you to take part in this. And thanks, Julian, again, for your help in getting this together. There's Julian. And again, this will be, and Julian, if you could pop the link to the GGC YouTube channel into the link for those that want to keep an eye open for it. And I do share that link on the National DGC Art Department Forum and also the Ontario one. So we kind of share that out there so you can watch it again or share it with your friends and family or something. So yeah. So again, thanks so much for this, and whatever you're doing, hope it goes well and enjoy the rest of the summer.
Thank you for
Thanks, Marian.
Great.
Thank you so much, everyone.
Thank you so much. Okay.